Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to our first workshop of the day at the Arlington Home Show and Garden Expo virtual event this year. And now, for that beginning, for the next workshop, we have our local celebrity here, Anthony Colella, and he's going to be talking today about a guide to go solar in Arlington. So please, your microphone is mute, and you can ask your questions on the chat area anytime, and we'll be collecting those questions, and Anthony will be answering those at the end of the presentation. But we'll see if there is so many questions, then we'll answer. Get him to answer that a little bit earlier. So with that said, Anthony, please take it away.
All right. Thank you, Jorge. Appreciate it, guys. Good morning. Thank you for spending your Sunday morning with me. And if you're like me with kids, you've been up for a couple hours, maybe on your second cup of coffee. And if you're just joining me, well, then enjoy that cup and we'll get into it. So let me go ahead and share my screen here and we'll go over the presentation. So this is a guide to go solar in Arlington. Some fast background on myself. I have actually been doing solar and doing solar in Arlington, living in Arlington as well, for the last 12 years. And so when I started in this industry, I actually was designing and installing systems myself. I've moved into a more consulting role right now. And currently I am owner operator of Edge Energy, which is a local solar designer and installer. And so we install solar throughout Virginia, Maryland, and DC. And so this is specific. What I want to go over is a guide to go solar in Arlington, which is things to look for. This is going to be in part educational. This is going to be me giving you tips on how to go solar, what to look for, some of the different options and ranges of presentations and equipment and all that kind of stuff. And we'll try to keep it kind of easy breezy and light. Like Jorge mentioned, go ahead and be typing your questions into the chat if you can. That'll just keep us an eye on how many questions we have, and I'll kind of tailor the conversation towards that. If we need a couple minutes or if we need a good 10 or 15 at the end, that's great. And if you could just take your notes and pop them in there, that would be fantastic and a big help. All right, so I'm famous with starting a lot of my meetings, a lot of my virtual meetings, because this is the way the world is going right now, with a quote. And today's quote is, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." That was from Margaret Mead, who was an anthropologist back in the 60s and 70s, and something that I believe is true and applies to solar, because solar is, while the industry has reached a level of maturity and trust, and we know how this stuff works, it still takes people, individual homeowners, individual business owners, investors, stuff like that, to turn their eye and look into this stuff and ultimately go solar and change the way our world is powered. And there's a lot of power in that. There's a lot of power in the community. My goal is to get as much solar into the community as possible. This is definitely a business for me, and there's business things that run decisions and how we do things, but ultimately we got into this to change the way the world is powered, and the social aspect of this is very powerful. So my small group of thoughtful, committed citizens are right here. This is my company. I am not here to necessarily promote them, but I need to give them a shout and just show you who I am today. So we're about 50 people today working in Virginia, Maryland, and DC as both a home performance company, focusing on insulation, air sealing, trying to reduce energy use at home. And a lot of times we're fixing comfort and indoor air quality concerns. And then the other half of us focus on solar, which I say solar, which is actually new roofs, solar storage, which is batteries, and EV car chargers. And so this is an awesome group. My guys are fantastic. We have a lot of fun getting solar into the area. And between the systems we've installed and maintained, we've got about 4,000 systems in the area, mostly homes, and then a few small businesses in there as well. So why go solar? I am specifically not here at this meeting to convince you to go solar. I can also say that since I've personally helped somewhere over 1,000 people in the Virginia and DC, Maryland area go solar, why ranges all over the map. There's a lot of different reasons why people go solar, and there's a lot of great reasons to go solar. My approach to going solar and my approach to this meeting here today is, again, I'm not here to convince anybody what this is, what it's good for, why it's good, bad, sideways, or otherwise. I am here to say that solar is here to stay. Solar is a fantastic way to make clean energy, and you've got to figure out why. And what I find is, on one side, there's the save money crowd. And solar does save money. Several years ago, it was a big thing where solar officially became cheaper than the utility. Now, that is not cheaper day one. You gotta invest in the system or financing to get the system, which we'll talk about. But over time, as far as into the future as I can see, you and I and all of our neighbors and everything will purchase electricity for our homes for forever, as far as I can see. And going solar is a way to, a lot of times you think of it as prepaying your electric bill. And so if you invest in creating your own power, there's a lot of benefits for the environmental components and the greenness of that power, which is great. But ultimately, you are absolutely saving money. You're putting money back in your pocket, and you're creating a stable future at your house and building in home value as well. So that's on the top. That's on one side. On the other side, at the bottom, I have the Save the Planet folks. These are, call them tree huggers, call whatever you want, but this is changing the way our world is powered so that we can do our part for the environment. That's reducing your carbon footprint. That is creating clean, free power on your roof for decades to come, rather than relying on, in our area, Dominion Energy. Other areas you might be with Novec or Pepco or BG&E, but ultimately not relying on that utility, which has a mix of power sources. The utilities are going to have a lot of coal, a lot of natural gas. You've got nuclear, you've got some wind, you've got some solar, you've got all these different sources. And what we're saying is create your own power from solar panels on your roof, no fossil fuels, nothing like that. And then there's the in-betweeners. And that's what I find is people go solar to save money or save the planet, and there's a sliding scale in between there. I have very few people that are only in the Save the Planet base camp, and I have very few people that are only save money. There's a lot of in-betweeners. And some of the other benefits are energy independence. That is where you are creating your own power, especially if you have battery storage. This is something where you can be self-sustaining. You can make it through power outages. You can do your own stuff. You're not so reliant on the utility. Distributed generation. This is, you can Google that term, but distributed generation is basically making a stronger grid by having a lot of small power plants. And a solar system on your roof is a power plant. So rather than having centralized power, big monster plants, whether that's coal or nuclear or anything else, having distributed generation is much more, it's better for grid resiliency. Which is the next one here, grid resiliency. These are interdependent. These are kind of the same idea, but it's rather than have the risk of a big power plant that could fall under technical problems, could fall under attacks, cyber attacks, terrorist attacks, could fall under weather events. We saw Texas just a couple months ago go to -6 degrees. This is where I grew up, and the electric grid failed. And thousands of people, tens of thousands of people were without power for a long time. Texas homes are not built to go that cold. And so people had broken pipes and freezing water and floods and all these big issues because that centralized power station failed. And grid resiliency and distributed generation is a great way to start boosting up the strength of our grid. Control and self-reliance. Self-reliance, again, that's with batteries or making your own power mostly as well. Control is about just controlling your energy. They say that the Dominion Energy is not a monopoly. I would argue it flirts very close to that, because I know at my house, I don't have a choice. I can sign up for power from Dominion, or I cannot get my certificate of occupancy permit and not live in my house. And so control is a way to say, hey, I do have options. I can invest in making my own power. I can control my bill. If I can cover 100% of my bill, then when Dominion Power goes up 5% next year, 2% the year after that, more expense, more and more and more with inflation and investment and everything else. If you are covering all of your bill or even some of your bill with solar, you're taking that risk. You're taking that inflation off the table. And then the last one is home value. This is absolutely investing in your home value. Solar adds a lot of value to your home. There are countless studies out there. I will pop in on one or two later, but this is something where a lot of people say, you know, should I invest in solar if I'm only going to live here for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? I don't know what's going to happen in the future. And investing in solar is something where there's a great tax credit out right now. There's a great net metering policy with Dominion Power. You can start getting your clean energy, start your investment payback now. And if you do sell, you're going to get a tremendous value back on your home, and you're going to make it more better for the market. People are going to be looking at your home if there's a similar home in the area without solar versus yours with solar and no utility bill or very low utility bill. Yours is going to go a lot faster. Basics on how this works. Now, I've been in this industry a long time, and a lot of these presentations, you get into gigawatt speak, and you get into the details, and the devil can be in the details. I like to keep things simple, okay? The way solar works at our house on an unscientific level is we're going to put panels on your roof exactly like you see on this little cartoon house here. And when this lovely thing called the sun rises every single day, it's going to shine energy onto these panels, and those are going to make electricity. Simple as that. We'll unpack a couple of those details in a bit, but that's what happens. What we do with that electricity is we pipe that directly into your house. So your circuit breaker, where all your breakers are for the kitchen, the bathroom, and the HVAC, and all that kind of stuff, you're going to have another breaker in there called your solar breaker. And so this solar energy is going to go on the exact same kind of electrical lines as everything else in your house, and it's going to pop into that main service panel. So that what happens is when that clean energy is being generated, it's going to come into the house and it's going to hit all those circuits inside. So when you wake up, you come downstairs, you're having breakfast, when you open the fridge, when you turn on the lights, when you start the pot of coffee, whatever's using energy inside, that is using your solar power directly. Anytime that solar is creating more energy than your house needs, it simply flows backwards away from the house, outside, goes back to the utility. Now, the wonderful thing about solar and distributed generation is we are not generating this power on your roof, and if you're making too much, sending it all the way to a power plant in central Virginia and back. Where it's literally going to go is just go to your next door neighbor, whoever's next in line on the power grid. Now, when it leaves your house, it is going to count your meter backwards. That little ounce of energy, which is called a kilowatt hour, is going to be removed from your bill, and your bill will go down accordingly. On the flip side, if solar is not generating enough power, let's say it's in the middle of the night or it's early morning, or you're just using and doing a lot of stuff, charging that EV, air conditioners cranking, what have you, then you're just going to pull whatever you need extra from the utility. So the great thing about solar is you will not notice you have solar power. Your HVAC and air conditioning will feel the same. The lights will look the same. Everything inside will operate the exact same as it is today. And you also don't have to baby it. If you want to buy 14 Teslas and build a pool in the backyard and do an addition and mine Bitcoin in the basement or whatever you want to do, you are free to do whatever you want. You're just getting your power from two different sources, a little from Dominion, a little from solar. On a monthly basis, what this looks like is we call it net metering. And so if you have a normal $200 electric bill in any given month, and you can create $175 worth of solar energy, then your new bill, 25 bucks. That's it, easy peasy. On the flip side, my system at my house, for example, is designed to do about 80 or 90% of my needs year round. And in the month of May, where we're at right now, I usually produce a good 140 to 160% of my needs, because I'm not running my air conditioner too much, so my bills are usually pretty low. But if we have a good sunny May, my solar panels are going crazy. And so on a month like that, if I have the same $200 electric bill, but let's say I create $240 worth of solar energy, then what's going to happen is that month in Dominion territory, you're going to pay what we call a $0 bill. What you actually pay is Dominion's minimum connection charge, which is about $7. And various utilities vary, but it's usually between that $6 to $10 range. So you pay your $7, and that $40 credit works like rollover minutes used to do on a cell phone plan. And so it'll roll forward to June, July, August, et cetera, so you can use those credits later in the year. And the big benefit of this is called net metering. Not all states have net metering. Some are better than others. Virginia has a very good, easy net metering policy. What they're basically saying is we don't care when you create this energy. We don't care when you use it. We don't care how much that is. You're just going to get credit for every dollar that comes off of your roof, whether it goes into your house and is used by the home free power, or it leaves the house and goes back to the utility. And when you do have credits built up where power is leaving the house and going back to the utility, you're actually getting the full rate. So that full 10.5, 11-cent rate that you pay Dominion for power, they are crediting that entire amount back to you as well. Biggest question I get when I talk to people about solar, especially folks that I meet on the street or I'm wearing my shirt in the grocery store or something like that. How much do I need? Very easy question that is different for every single house that I talk to. Okay, this is not a ubiquitous standard answer. How much you need depends on three things. And the first two I say are my job, and the last one is your job. First one is roof area. How much roof area do I have, and where do I get good sun? Okay, if you are in the middle of a forest with 80-foot tall trees right around you, 10 feet away from the house, you might not be a candidate for solar. So the first thing is you got to qualify. You got to have a decent area on your roof for panels. That area needs to be mostly unshaded. Okay, we can deal with a little bit of morning shade, a little bit of afternoon shade, and some chimneys and stuff here and there, but we don't want you to be blasted with shade. We want to have good open sun. The other thing is, and this has changed over the time, is a lot of people say, well, you have to have a south-facing roof to go solar. Not true. This used to be very, very important because of the way the equipment was made and the efficiencies of how we make this energy. Today, you're still gonna make the most amount of energy from a south-facing roof because the sun is going to be in that zone, shining that direction most of the time, most of the year, throughout the year. But if you have a house facing directly east, exactly like my system is on my roof, 20 feet above my head right now, my east-facing system produces almost 90% of the energy that exact same system would produce if it was facing perfectly due south. So we can install west, we can install east, you can install south. You can install low slope, high slope, doesn't much matter. The point is, how much do you need starts with how much roof area do I have in good sunny areas. Next one, what are your energy needs? Because I am who I am and I do what I do, I am very energy conscious. My entire electric bill prior to solar was several $100s for the entire year. It's about $500 or $600 for the entire year. Another person living in my exact same house might use double that, double and a half. It all depends on how efficient your house is, how many people are there, and how you're using energy. Okay, with coronavirus and the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of people are working and schooling from home. We're spending more times in our homes, and a lot of people have seen their energy bills have gone up. I've seen 10, 20%, I feel like most of the time for about the last year. And the way you use energy in your house is not going to be the same as the way somebody else. So if I have two identical houses, like the house I have behind me here, I can't just say, hey, you need 20 panels on your roof, and so does your neighbor with the exact same house, because you guys may use energy in completely different ways. So we design to the roof first, and then we design to your utility bill. And that's where, if you're going solar, it's very, very important to share your utility bill with your designer, with your installer, with your salesperson, so that they can design a system accordingly. So those are my two rules. Those are my two jobs. Here's the third one, and this is for you: budget. If you want to cover all of your energy needs and you can afford to take out the financing or pay for the system up front, fantastic. If you don't want to go that big and you want to start smaller or go smaller up front, that's okay too. When it comes to offset, we call offset, how much of your energy bill am I covering with solar panels? I do not do 100% offset with all my houses. I don't have the luxury, especially in Arlington. A lot of times we have chopped up roofs where we have maybe 3, 4, 5, 10 different roof areas on homes, so I can only fit so many panels. And then we do have these things called trees, which sometimes eliminate or make some roofs better than others. And so that's where each system is custom designed to the house. Our average offset for the last several years is about 80%. I have as many systems that cover 110, 120, 140% of their needs as I do that cover 20 or 30 or 40% of their needs. You do not have to cover your entire bill. The net metering policy that we went over on the last couple slides is why. And some people say, well, if I can only cover 30% or 50% of my bill, why should I go solar? And that's a fair question. My first answer is that it's a lot better to take control and not get screwed or not get tied to Dominion on half of your bill than be stuck with Dominion for the entire thing. If we can't control all of it, I'd still rather control half. There's a great financial incentive. There's a great financial savings in doing that. And ultimately, it matters about your roof area, your energy needs, and then your budget on how much of that energy we're able to cover with solar panels. Now here's a basic overview of a system. Now this is called the SunPower Equinox system. SunPower is a manufacturer. They're pretty much one of the last American manufacturers out there. That is the company that I work with. So I am biased, but it is also fact that SunPower is the best solar equipment on the planet, period. So we're talking most power, most efficiency, most everything, great warranty, all of that stuff. My point on this, though, is not to highlight the SunPower product differences or advantages, but to look at kind of an exploded view of a system. And you basically have four main components to a solar system. All solar systems will have these. You have your panels, your inverters, your racking, and your monitoring. Unpacking those panels, that's the easiest one, right? That's the moneymaker. That's what actually produces the energy on your roof. That's what you see. That is the cool, slick part of solar. And so you can see an example of 10 panels right here. Inverters. This is an important piece, arguably sometimes more important than the panel choice themselves. Inverters are going to take the direct current, DC energy that your panels are going to produce, and they're going to flip that into AC, alternating current, so we can use it inside the house. The inverter, there's a couple of different options and different ways that you can do inversion. The basic three, the first one is with string inverters. That's where you have one big inverter or sometimes two or three big inverters, depending on the size of your system, usually hung outside the house or in the garage or in the basement, which is going to take all the energy from all the panels all at once and flip it to AC and put it inside. Good proven technology. These have been out for decades. They're very efficient. They're very reliable. String inverters are, in general, I say they're old school solar. And that's because the issues with a string inverter, the two big things I don't love about them. Number one, they treat the panels like Christmas lights. And by that, I mean, if you have a little bit of shade or a little bit of soiling, or you have a problem with one panel up there, then all the other panels on that string are going to operate at the lowest common denominator. What that means, I have 10 panels right here on the screen. If this top left panel, let's say there's a chimney or a tree branch that's coming in late afternoon, starting to shade, and this guy's only producing 50% of its power, all the other panels on that string are only going to produce 50% of their power as well. If I have a problem and that panel is off, everybody else turns off as well. So you get a little performance hurt and a challenge on design with string inverters. A lot of guys in the area are not using string inverters. Like I said, this is old school solar. The other thing that I don't love about them is they're really only designed to last about 10 or 12 years. And so that's something where every decade or so, you've got to reinvest a couple $1,000 to keep your system running. And once I install a system, I want that thing to just work for you guys. Second option on inverters called the Solar Edge system. No relation to Edge Energy. Solar Edge is a manufacturer, and we say this is the second option because they're the only guys that are doing this, and they have what's called an optimizer inverter setup. Optimizer is a cute little box on each individual panel, which helps with shade performance. It means you're going to not have as much loss of energy. The other panels on a string are not going to go down to that lowest common denominator. You crank out a little bit more juice. Solar Edge on paper, very good product, good warranty, good specs, good efficiency. I'm not in love with them personally because, again, you're still relying on string inverters on the ground. And that's where most systems, our average system, we'd install 2 of these per house. You've got two big boxes, electrical boxes hanging somewhere. I don't like to put those outside because they're not the most tasteful things in the world. So you got to have space for them somewhere. You got to look at them. And if you remember, with string inverters, they're only built to last about 10 or 12 years. And so with Solar Edge, that's something where later down the road at the back half of the life of the solar system, you're going to have to be expecting to invest a little bit in swapping out those inverters as they go bad. Last way to do inversion is microinverters. This is my personal favorite. This is the way SunPower does it. This is the way I've done pretty much all my systems for the last several years. And that's where you've got one individual inverter on each individual panel. Um, I prefer this. I think it's the best way to go solar because you're going to get a performance bump. You can deal with and mitigate shade a lot better. You can also localize if you ever have a warranty claim or a problem. You've got one panel that's down, everybody else is still producing, and you've also got a full 25-year warranty on these things. Microinverters also got a bad rap. If you research and you Google them, I have a lot of people say, hey, I found some not so good stuff on microinverters. And the company Enphase that actually pioneered these back in, I think it was 2008, 10, they really started to take off a couple years after that. They launched into the market with a product that was not built as well as everybody had hoped and thought. And so the entire industry in that time seemed to be going towards microinverters. And then all of a sudden, after they'd been installed for a while, they would start to pop. They'd overheat and they'd just shut down. And we had hundreds, thousands of warranty claims on microinverters. And it was just the fact that that generation one technology was not up to snuff. It couldn't cut it on the East Coast, where we get the best of the hot, the best of the cold, high humidity, very aggressive, harsh environments for solar equipment. Since then, we have refined the microinverter technology to where we're now past 5 generations of microinverters. We have figured out how to make these things withstand time and weather and heat and all of that. And so they are much, much more reliable today than they were. And that final solution, which we're still installing today, has now been out for several years. And so it's standed the test of time and goes through a lot of stress testing as well in labs to make sure that it's working well. So inverters is a big one. Those are the 3 options. I'm partial to microinverters. I think solar edge has its time and place. A lot of guys in the area are doing solar edge. Like I said, I'm not in love with it, but it is a solid product on paper and a decent warranty as well. Racking is simply what holds everything to your roof. There's a lot of different racking systems out there. They all use the same basic principles. And this is something where we are, in general, putting holes in your roof. But if you're talking to a quality installer that's using good racking system, there is extremely little risk for any roof leak. And then the last one is monitoring. Monitoring is simply, that's what gives you the power in your hands to look at your system, to see how it's doing day in and day out. You can read your power levels hourly, weekly, monthly. You can never look at them if you want, but they're right there in an app on your smartphone, or you can log in to a website online. Now, how to pay for it, how to go solar. So there's 3 basic options here too. And again, I'm trying to simplify this, but you need to talk about your house with a local or with a installer in the area to look at your options. But the big 3, the first one is a lease or a PPA. Now I'm going to fly through this because leases and PPAs generally are not readily available in Virginia. But when you hear about free solar, this is usually what they're talking about. When you see an ad on Facebook or Google or whatever for free solar, this is usually what they're talking about. And with a lease or a PPA, essentially what that is we solarize your house on our dime. You create clean power on your roof. Don't pay for anything. All the reliability or the liability, the maintenance, everything is on me for that. You simply purchase the solar energy at a cheaper rate than you would normally get from the utility. So the big advantage there is, again, free solar, you don't pay anything, you don't have any risk or liability. The system is taken care of and maintained. You just simply have savings the day you turn on the system, guaranteed. And a lot of times a lease or a power purchase agreement will save you tens of thousands of dollars over usually a 15 to a 25-year term. Now, I mentioned in Virginia, these are not readily available because we do have the advantage of having relatively cheap power. And so a lease or a PPA arrangement does not always pencil out to work, at least not with quality equipment in Virginia. But these are very, very popular in Maryland. They're also getting speed in DC and a lot of other places like Jersey, New York, California, stuff like that. Second option is financing. And there's a million different financing options out there. That's where you've got to talk to your potential installer. They will go over your options. I would say that the easiest 2, number 1, is a lot of people have like what they call a same as cash or a deferred interest financing, where they say, hey, we'll give you a year and a half, 2 years or something like that. As long as you have everything paid off, then interest goes away. We offer that, for example, and most of the installers in the area do. And the advantage there is that lets you get your 26% federal tax credit back from the government. It lets you get a year or 2 years or whatever of solar generation and savings and all that, and gives you that many months to sort of stow away the money and figure out how to pay for this. The other option would be monthly financing, where you're carrying out on term financing. Typically, the longest loans go out to 20, sometimes 25 years. And that means a lot of times you can get your payments for solar, depending on your size and equipment and total cost and everything like that. Usually we see payments around $100, $150 a month, something like that. And a lot of times that can be very comparable to your current energy bill or how much you're saving on solar. And so that's something where if you need your post-solar cost to be close to your current cost of energy, then financing, monthly financing is a great way to go. And then a lot of installers, including myself, offer a cash discount. If you do pay by check, obviously we avoid the credit fees and the bank fees and stuff like that. That is generally the cheapest way to go solar. That will give you your fastest payback, your best investment, but you just have to have the money up front to do that. General costs, again, a lot of people say, how much do I need? And then how much does it cost? And I can't answer that exactly. What I can say is that our average system in the area before that federal tax credit and rebates, usually you're in the $18,000 to $30,000 range. I have just as many systems in the 50,000 plus category as I have in the under $15,000 category, because again, going back to that other slide, it all depends on your roof, your energy needs, and your budget. So on average, 18 to 30 grand to cover 80% of your bill. That's sort of where I start the conversation, just to say, hey, here's what you're probably looking at by the numbers. I need to see a utility bill and see your address to check it out and verify. So then installers. So once you've decided this is something you may want to pursue, you need to pick an installer. And I see that there's kind of two different paths that have formed in Virginia. You can go with the big box stores, which would be guys like Tesla and Sunrun and Vivint and stuff like that. And then you can go with the local guys, which would be like me. I am a buy local guy. I get my produce from the farmers markets and stuff like that. So I am totally biased here. I do in solar recommend this in general as well, because the big box stores, while they can leverage their volume to get really cheap product, a lot of times that business model loans itself to a race to the bottom, where let's install the cheapest solar we can, which is not always a quality product. And the big box stores also, there's a big game of subcontracting. A lot of times they're subcontracting to smaller guys like me or other folks in the area, or if they have their own internal teams, there's a mixed bag. There's good installer teams and there's bad ones. And so the big box ones, I think there's a lot more unknown going into it versus the local guys. You are our bread and butter. You are our backbone. I can't have an unhappy customer if I'm only doing 300 or 500 of these a year or something like that. And so usually a lot of times you're able to get better quality. You want to look at the history and experience. How many installs have they done? If a company's only been around for 3 years, 5 years, a couple hundred installs, I wouldn't say that they're experts and they know exactly what you're doing. If they have over 1,000, now you're getting into it. You have somebody that knows what they're doing. Options as well. That's financing options, equipment options. You want to play your different options and talk to multiple people, because everybody's going to have a different business model and approach solar in a different way. And so what's best for your neighbor might not be best for you. And so you want to have options for equipment and financing engines. And the last one is quality and warranty. You want to look at the installer warranty. A lot of times the product will have at least a 10-year warranty on most stuff. The best things like SunPower has is a 25-year full coverage warranty. You want to check to see if that covers deinstallation, reinstallation, labor, shipping, testing, all of those other costs. And check out the installer warranty as far as what they warranty their work for. We've got a 25-year warranty, for example, that covers roofing, roof leaks, every nut, bolt, and piece on there, so that when we install solar, you've got 2.5 decades where you don't have any cost or any worries. And then as far as the solar journey, this is kind of the last bit, and we'll jump into some questions here in a moment. But what this looks like in Arlington, I will give a nod. If there's anybody here, any of the county guys that are watching this, thank you. And any customers, any clients here that live in Arlington, you're in a very, very good, you're lucky to be in the county that you live in, because Arlington County is one of the fastest, nicest, and best permit offices to work in. Fairfax is right behind them if we have anybody in the area. So Arlington, very, very simple permitting process, very simple design process. A lot of times we're getting permits within a couple of days, no big deal, which is fantastic. So what a solar journey looks like is take your time, find the right installer, do your research on equipment, get a couple quotes. Once you decide to move forward, that's where we say sign up. That's day one. That's the start of your journey. Usually when we run presentations, and we're doing almost all Zoom presentations just like this online. So it's not a big time suck. It's not a big, scary, crazy thing. And we're of the opinion of kind of low pressure sales. We want you to be educated and make a good decision for you that's understood and you're excited about. So typically we meet with you for about an hour, maybe 2 hours, something like that online. You can tweak the system, change things, look at different product and financing afterwards. But once you sign up, within the first month, the first thing that's going to happen is we're going to get our utility green light and our county green light. Each one of those, depending on time of year in the house, is going to take a different, but usually we say about 3 or 4 weeks is the amount of time that we need to get a yes from Dominion and a yes from the county. What happens after that is now you're in queue for installation. So a lot of times in Arlington, we are installing somewhere around 4 to 8 weeks after you sign up. Depends on how busy we are, depends on weather, depends on a lot of different things, but generally 4 to 8 weeks is what we're looking at. So installation right here, just one day, most systems, very simple, in and out. County inspections the week after that. And then the following month, that's where Dominion is coming out, swapping your meter and allowing you to turn the system on. So this is pretty quick and painless. Again, it's basically one installation day right in the middle there, about a month or two lead time before that, about a month after that before you're ready to rock and roll, but it's pretty fast, quick, painless, and easy.
Excellent.
Last one is boosting our home value. I'll actually maybe just recommend people do their research on this, but there are Zillow studies out there and Civic Works and NREL and all kinds of stuff where a lot of times we are adding about 4% of the home's value to their homes. And I can tell you, I have sold my solar home and helped other customers sell their homes as well. They go fast for good value, and this is a great way to build value into your house.
Great, great.
So
Thank you, Anthony. That was great. We have some questions here. And by the way, in the chat area, we have the link for Edge Energy homepage. So please stop by and take a look at all what they are offering. Anthony, we have the first question here. Um, how are the solar panels protected from rodents or the elements? And I'm going to add to that question, how often do you have to clean those solar panels? So probably it's many maintenance and all of that.
sure, yes. Great question. I love this question. And on the East Coast, we do have these little things called squirrels. And squirrels are funny little birds because they like to seek refuge under the solar panels, especially in the wintertime, because they're protected. It's nice and warm under there. And so number one, on the outside, all solar panels, you're going to have an aluminum frame and you're going to have tempered glass on top. These things are built to withstand 130 mile an hour wind, 90 mile an hour golf ball size hail, and 36 inches of snow. So what that means is whatever Mother Nature wants to throw at you, aside from a freak tornado event that's sending a big oak tree into the house anyway, solar panels will be able to stand up to whatever is normal. Now, protected from rodents and everything like that, that is an important thing, where if you have trees, generally within 6 feet of the roofing line or overhanging the roof, I very strongly recommend what we call squirrel guards or pest guards. That is nothing fancy. It is nothing crazy. It is simply what we do, and most installers, is a black metal mesh around the outside of the panels. And that's going to be either stuck or mechanically fastened onto them, which basically means that any pests or birds or anything can't access the underside of the panels. If you are living in a house like behind me right here, where there are no trees nearby, I have never had a pest problem where there were not trees next to the house or overhanging the house. But if you do have those, I think it's very, very important to have squirrel guards installed. That's something, it usually ranges, a few $100, maybe upwards of $1,000 on a really big system. And so that's something where it's very worthwhile to have that included, because pest damage is not going to be covered on any of the warranties. And generally, homeowners insurance policies are hit or miss on whether they cover that or not. So that's an important one where it's site specific to the design, and you want to talk to your installer and your designer about that. Cleaning them, your last question, that's a great one as well. The panels are made to be self-cleaning. So when the worst that happens usually is like last week or a couple weeks ago when the pollen pops and gets all over the hood of your cars and stuff like that. You'll have a nice dusting on the panels. If you're real crazy about your monitoring system, you'll see a little drop in energy. Um, Once the first rain comes through, generally that's going to wash everything off, and so it's not a problem. On flat roofs, so like in DC, we install a lot of flat roofs or really low slope, kind of like the system behind me here. It is best to clean the panels. I say once a year, maybe twice a year after each season, and that's just like washing the hood of a car. Soft cloth, no Clorox or harsh chemicals, no wire brush. Just get the soot and the gunk off of them. If you never wash them, nothing bad will happen. And you can do that and feel fine about it. If you do wash them, you'll just squeeze out a couple percent more juice. And there are third-party installer, actually companies that specifically do just that. And a lot of the installers like myself will also do that. A lot of times if I can clean your system while I'm installing in the area, it's $100 or something like that.
Great, great. So the next question, Anthony, is what is the best cardinal orientation to install the panels on the roof?
Yes. So my first answer is don't overthink this. And a lot of people do overthink it. And I say don't overthink it because, again, if I have a system that's facing perfectly due south, which would be the best, to answer your question, the best angle, as well as about a give or take a 40-degree tilt. The difference between that south face 40-degree tilt and a south face 12-degree tilt is so infinitesimally small. You're talking 2% difference in energy, maybe less, 1% difference in energy. Even south versus due east or due west. Those east or west systems are going to be cranking out almost 90% of the energy as the south facing one. So don't overthink it because the difference is probably not as much as you think. Again, if you're really squeezing 3% more juice, we're talking dollars of energy per year, which certainly adds up, and we want to get the best producing system up there, but it's a pretty small amount. The other thing is you have the roof you have. So unless you're planning to build a new house, we're working with whatever you have up there. I do not recommend, and usually the county permit offices and engineers don't want us tilting panels and being all crazy. It can look a little nutty, but it also is really hard to design that effectively for water and wind because the wind is going to want to rip those out if they're tilted up. So south is always best, but anything in the southern direction, east or west included, is fine. And we do install systems facing north. I don't like to do it on a steep pitch, but if you've got a low pitch like this one, 1, 2, 12, 2 or 3 pitch, then that's no big deal. It'll produce less energy, but that's where all installers should be when they give you your proposal. Say, here's how much energy you're going to make, and they'll consult with you on where things can and should go.
Great. Thank you, Anthony. We have another question. If you cover 120% of your needs, does Dominion cut you a check at the end of the year?
Very good question. So in some utility areas, yes, they do. In most, at least that we work with. So like, for example, in Maryland, if you overproduce, you will get a check. But when you get that check, that extra 20% in your example, if you produce 120% of your needs across a year, that extra 20%, they're going to buy it at wholesale rates. And so that's what they produce power for. That's like the supply, the generation rate of electricity, which is usually like 3 or 4 cents a kilowatt hour. So you're not getting that full value. I over systems all the time for future usage. So if somebody says, I'm probably going to get an EV, electric vehicle next year, 2 years down the road, or we're building an addition, or we've got, a kid on the way, we're going to be using more energy for whatever reason, I'll oversize systems. Absolutely. And yes, you lose a little bit of value on that excess generation. But again, it's usually a pretty small amount. Dominion does not do that. Dominion, their net metering when it comes to overages is a little complicated, and I'm not going to probably have time to unpack that entirely right now. The simple answer is this, is on a month-to-month basis, it works like rollover minutes do, like I mentioned earlier in the presentation. So if in 1 month you create 120%, then you'll have a 20% credit, which simply rolls forward to subsequent months so you can use them later in the year. On a yearly basis, and that's what they look at, 12 months. So let's say from May 23rd to May 23rd, 2022, if I turn my system on today for the first time, then if I have an excess, that excess is essentially donated back to Dominion. And so they will not write you a check. It gets complicated because they do look at the generation of solar and how much energy you use on the first month after you go solar, as well as the last month for there. So you can get some credit on that. But the easiest way I tell my homeowners is just assume you're going to lose that credit. So if you have no reason to overbuild the system, let's design a system to do 80, 90, 100% and stick there.
Great, great, Anthony. If you have 30 seconds to tell everybody where they can reach you, where can you answer more questions for them, what is the best place to do it?
Sure. So I'll say you can go to our website, which is www.edge-gogreen.com. That's where we've got home performance with energy audits and insulation stuff, as well as solar. And then you can also learn all about the SunPower product at sunpower.com. They are, like I said, that's our manufacturer. That is the best equipment in all of solar on the entire planet. And they're an American company as well, which I like.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Anthony, and thank you everybody that participated. We are getting ready for the next workshop, but please don't forget to go and ask Anthony more questions. He's waiting for you anytime. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.